All right, welcome back. We've got something special for you this week. Believe it or not, it's been 30 years since I founded Strength of America. So we thought we'd do a little question-answer session here, and Bobby's got some questions together. Part of it mainly just background on Strength of America, where I came up with the idea, background on myself at Nebraska, where we were at through the program, when we brought Bobby into the program, and the family. A few things in. So make sure you guys, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, get ready for episode 49 of the Strength of America podcast.
The Strength of America podcast.
We're back. Yes, it's hard to believe. It's been 30 years. 1989, I started Strength of America, leaving the University of Nebraska and coming out here to Arizona. And tired of the snow and thought we'd do something new out here. And it's flown by pretty quickly. So Bobby's, I think, has got a few questions for me. Going to find out and see what's going on and some things we've had from you guys. So hopefully we'll keep you excited as we go along.
We got a group of them, so if you're looking for Bob not to talk too much today, well, you're out of luck. So, all right, first question. When did you start training yourself? When did you start working out?
Myself was junior high. Actually, I got to, at that time, we had just moved to Germany. Dad was in the Air Force, so we were stationed over in Germany for 3.5 years. I was over there 7th through 10th grade. And with a buddy of mine back there, we got into, of course, the muscle and fitness. That was about the time, I think it was 76, 77, when Pumping Iron came out with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno and the whole gang, and that was big time out there. So it really wasn't about, at that time, performance. It was more about
aesthetics, how you look.
Yeah, let's look good. And
Sun's
get
out,
the curls
guns
for
out.
the girls type of thing.
Yeah. So what sports did you partake in? When did you start sports?
Mine were baseball, track, and wrestling were mine.
Bowling too, huh?
Yeah, we got a little bit of that. Yeah, that's still be. Yeah, I did some bowling too. Yeah, when I was a young guy, a little bit old, about probably 4th grade, my dad got me into wrestling. That was our thing. He was a wrestler in high school back in Bend, Oregon, and with back and forth, while we were at Nebraska, 4th through 6th grade, I got into wrestling, and that was my thing, and also at baseball at the same time. So at that point, it was I did a little bit of both. My 6th grade, I ended up cutting my wrestling short after a little run-in with my brother's head. We were chasing each other around a building and decided we'd race but go opposite directions. Guess what happened? Yeah, we came across the last corner, head butted right into each other, knocked him out cold and busted my nose, and that was it for the wrestling season. So then it was on to baseball after that. And then later on, high school, got into track as well, but track and wrestling were my primaries later.
So with that said, did you ever have a strength coach in high school or like a PE teacher that taught weights? Or?
No, back in high school at that time, it was primarily the football coach ran the weight training program. And everybody did the same program. Didn't matter if you were a gymnast or any baseball. Didn't matter. Everybody did the same base program. And ended up actually my senior year, I actually started running the weight training program in there because we started seeing that you could do different things for different athletes. So the guys started coming in, and that was where I got even more interested in performance training, and really that it does make a difference what kind of lifts and what you're doing and how often. So a combination of stuff, primarily with muscle and fitness at that time. But at that time in the early 80s, they were getting into athletes and not just bodybuilding at that time. So I started picking up some things in that.
So what were the things you picked up? Or what would you make differently?
Well, some of the things I think at that time were he was primarily doing squats, power cleans were the big thing, and those were the main lifts, and he had everybody doing those, pulling it out. They didn't do any variance on any kind of push press or explosive movements trying to get hips. So I started looking into a little bit more on doing different things with cleans and push presses and really getting into more explosive stuff, and then combining it also with some box and jump training as well with our weight training in there, which most people didn't do any of that. So.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Did you go right to college after high school?
No, at that point, I finished up high school back in '82 and decided, it really wasn't ready for me. That year was going to be a year that I wasn't going to be doing any studying anyway. I wasn't ready for that. So I decided to move down to California and lived with my grandmother down there at that time, my dad's mom, and worked in some health clubs. Out there started with a small gym in there. Actually, after a day of working at Wiener Schnitzel, and then after that, found the job at the health.
That's
club.
where the corn dogs came from, apparently.
Definitely got involved in the corn dogs at that point. But they, that part was really a lot more about the health club. It was a small gym. It was a racquetball court, several, and then they took one of the racquetball courts and made it into a weight room. And that's when I started getting into more and more training. So I found a couple of my brothers, big guys. They were, at that time I was probably 145, 150. And these guys were 220, but we worked out together. We're similar strengths. I was always really strong at that point, stronger than I didn't know enough about supportive muscle structure to keep the joint strong. It was just, let's keep going heavy. So I got into that, worked more health clubs, and then after about a year and a half of that, decided it was time to go back to school. So that's when I came back and went to the University of Nebraska then.
With that said, do you think it's beneficial for someone interested in athletic performance to go to college?
Yeah, I think you can gain a lot out of it. However, I think things are changing a little bit more with our industry, which is great. I mean, there's more and more things with the NSCA has got a lot of great things, but having your bachelor's to move on to certified strength conditioning specialist and so many things. But I think with some of the stuff that we did this summer, with athletes' performance and doing so much into it to try and really figure out what we can do for training. There's specific training programs now that 30 years ago, all of the certifications were primarily basic lifts going on. It didn't have anything to do with performance.
Movement and stuff.
Some of the stuff going on, and Pat Beath and some of these guys are coming on. And
Athletes acceleration.
The athletes acceleration, these guys, and with Bobby Smith and
Lee Taft.
Yeah, Lee Taft, definitely the speed. Yeah, they're pulling together some incredible things that I think, the college, I think there's a lot of great things for it, but we also realize there's a lot of classes and things in structure that when I finished college, I still wasn't ready to do what I did, and except for my online, the stuff that I did with Boyd Eppley out there. But without that, people that I finished school with out there that had no practical experience, they still didn't have a clue how to train.
Oh, yeah.
So the newer certifications I like because they're actually hands-on. They're working with these young coaches and teaching them really what to do. How do you get out there? Because I know Bobby Smith, we talked about it with his. They're working their certification programs as well right now, and that they get kids in. We get them too that come in and say, "Hey, we want to work for you. Want to go in? I finished my schooling," but we realize as we talk, they still don't know how to implement a program.
Yeah.
But where they come in and work through internship programs, and I think starting to get kids involved in that early will really prepare them so much more than just a blanket, bachelor's degree out there.
Yeah. Next, how did you get the position to be a assistant strength and conditioning coach at Nebraska?
Well, that was a combination of, some say it's luck, but we've always been involved in, you make your own luck. You get out and you start doing things. When I went to the University of Nebraska initially, I thought physical therapy, working athletic training, working with athletes was what I really wanted to do. But at that time, I didn't even realize there was a profession on building strength and power and speed at that point. We just knew that, we worked out, you get strong, but I was working with injured athletes trying to get in there. But once I got there, quickly found out about Husker Power and Boyd Eppley and started asking questions and going around and, making myself visible. And the guy in charge, Duke LaRue, who was at that time, I thought he was about 80 at that point. He'd been around there forever. But we would spend a ton of hours taping and working with athletes, but he also knew I really wanted to get involved in the strength and athletic performance, aspect of it. And happened to be in the office at the time that Boyd Eppley called and said, "Hey, we've got an opening." One of his coaches had just left and went to Notre Dame, so they had an opening in there. And wanted to know if they had somebody in, and he said, "Hey, I happen to have somebody right here." I took off right down, went to the complex and interviewed with him, and was brought onto the program at that point. So it was,
wow.
Like I said, you've got to be visible, I think, when you're looking for things. And the quiet guy out there that doesn't say anything, tough to make it happen. So.
Yeah. What were some of the things you learned from Boyd Eppley, the godfather of strength conditioning at Nebraska, while you were under him?
Yeah, a ton of things. I still do. I think
I bet.
one of the biggest things that seemed to be for him some pros and cons. I mean, for him, I thought it was fantastic because he not only was about outlining a specific program for building performance of an athlete, building their strength, their size, their power, learning how to eat with their training table, and revamping that, their speed and agility programs and things going. But he also, the business part, which he got involved in quite a bit too, which was his Husker Power program. So my last few years with them, I was actually, he put me in charge, he trained me how to do it. So we did online lifting programs for kids all over the country so they could learn the Husker Power program. So they got tested and figured out how to do it. We'd print out these sheets that at that time the printers were full sheets of paper that would just keep rolling on. You'd tear them off and send them out. So we'd send out 6-week programs to kids based on where their strength is, and it would break down the sets and reps and all going out. And then they got into protein powders and T-shirt sales, and so it was a way he understood too. To one, you could help more people that weren't just under him, that they're at Nebraska, kids all over the country, and at the same time, it brought revenue in, so he could do more on building the Husker Power brand and people and getting him involved. And he started the National Strength and Conditioning Association as well. And at that point, it was in Lincoln, Nebraska while I was there. So while I was there at the same time, again, being a part of it, we had one of the coaches that was in charge of program design for the state of Nebraska. And the last year, he stepped down from that, so I was able to do that. So I drove around to clinics around Nebraska, and that helped me a lot because at that point, it was periodization and training and working how to do it. But those coaches, since we didn't have the internet, you had to physically be there. So we'd go out to western Nebraska and all these smaller towns, but these coaches would come out and we do hands-on. We do practical stuff. Here's what's going on. We'd show them how to do the weight training. Here's how we implement our speed and power. Here's how to cycle through a program off-season, pre-season. So I started learning there's so much more involved rather than just the weight room. And that opened a lot of doors for me working with him in the NSCA at that point to really understand that man, it's so much more than what I thought it was originally. We've got to keep educating and keep that up. And that's part two that amazed me 30 years later, that now with the internet, it's amazing how many still are doing things from 30 years ago and haven't progressed the program. But, Boyd did a lot for that. And he caught some, flack from some of the other strength coaches because for them, strength coaching was just in your own thing and building it. Well, Boyd was more than that. Boyd has always been, bigger than life with his stuff because he doesn't think inside just that tight little area. He wants the world to know about Husker Power and strength program in Nebraska. And, if you want to learn and you want to get in, that was a part of the program. And,
yeah.
I think one of the things we saw going into the gym every day, into the office, was a big sign he had up there, which the great ones adjust. He taught us that you can always have a base plan, but man, you don't expect it to happen like that every day. There's going to be something that changes it, and if you're not ready for it, you're deer in the headlights, and then the kids aren't going to get what they need out of it, and you haven't done your job. So I think that was one of the big things too. But just that there's so much more than just the weight training. Learning more about that part of it and the business and, being there for other people, I think is what led me to the Strength of America.
What sports and athletes did you work with while you were there?
I was in charge, when we got in, we all worked with a football team, of course, because we had a couple hundred people with all the walk-ons that would come on. But after that first year, I was in charge of the incoming freshmen strength and conditioning year-round for the football. So all of them coming in, the testing, the evaluating, getting them on base programs and helping them learn the system so they can get into the program and go. So that was a big part for me. I was also in charge of the baseball, softball, and volleyball teams year-round. So I would do all of their in- and off-season programs for those three sports to work on athletic performance and peeking into it.
Awesome. What coaches did you work with while you were there as far as strength and conditioning? Like, what other strength coaches did you work with outside of Boyd?
Well, at that time, Mike Arthur, of course, and Mike Arthur and Boyd really built that program initially going into it, and at that point it was, we still have Dave Ellis is there right now too. He's actually come back. He's now in charge of nutrition and the training table and the meals and get everybody figured out how to eat together. They're gaining, losing, or whatever they need to do. Randy Goebel was there at the time, which at that point he was a mixture of the strength and conditioning coach that he worked with athletes, but at the same time he was in charge of all the facilities. So basically, if something was broke or needed to happen, or what was going on, or evaluating new equipment, and 30, he's still there now, and that's been well over 30 years since I left.
Yeah.
And he's been there, a long time, and Mike's been there a long time, and Boyd, of course, now this summer, when we're celebrating our 30th anniversary, he's celebrating 50 years when he started
that's neat.
Husker Power back
Holy
in
cow.
'69. Yeah. And that was pretty interesting too with Boyd, because he was brought on at that point. He was an athlete, actually originally here in Scottsdale, track athlete, pole vaulter, and went to Nebraska for that. Well, he injured his back, so as part of that, he figured out he had to, strength training, what he had to do to get himself back on. And as he's doing that, he's noticing other football players that are injured, so he starts working with them and getting in. Well, at that time, it was Bob Devaney was the head football coach. And he brought him into the office hearing that, what's this guy doing with our football players? And he told him what was happening and how we had a plan of building and getting these guys stronger and healthier so they could be even better on the field, but also less chance of injury. And old Bob Devaney at that point really, he said, okay, you got one chance. You make this happen, but if you make my guys slower, you're gone. You're fired right away. So he was the first strength and conditioning coach at the University of Nebraska at that next time. But then, subsequently, the next 2 years, Nebraska went on to win 2 national championships in a row after that. And then after that, it was a no-brainer. Husker Power was born. It was set. It was solid. And Boyd just didn't look back. He just kept going. And now programs all over the country are following suit.
So I know after your time at Nebraska, you kind of came down here to Arizona, right? And then you started Strength of America.
Yeah, that was mine. I think my last year I looked into a lot of things on, what the plan was. Was I going to stay there at Nebraska, or was I looking to go on to another school, or where I really wanted to go? And I still at that point was excited. The opportunity was fantastic. There were a lot of great things, but I also saw that different components of it didn't work together. And I wanted to see, okay, how do we really develop a program that doesn't just focus on strength and power, that works on injury prevention. And that's what it kind of took suit. And this is where I started getting involved just before I came to Nebraska, was because by the time I was 21, I had already had 4 knee and 3 shoulder surgeries. Yeah. Because we didn't know anything about training at that point. And training at that point was primarily, let's get bigger, let's get stronger, and then the rest would fall into place. We didn't understand how it worked or why. So at that young age, I was 145 at that point. I was benching 315 for 2, squatting 405 for 5. We were going heavy, really working things, which was pretty good. But then after that, I blew a biceps tendon. I tore my rotator cuff. We would warm up with 2 1/4 on the bench for 10 reps. I got 10. It's considered a warm-up because you could do weight for 10. Well, I couldn't do 11. So it wasn't worrying. But hey, I didn't want to look back because these guys at 220 I was lifting with, that's what they were doing, so you just did it.
Yeah.
So after a lot of time figuring out rehab, how to work with things in structure, getting tore up, there had to be a way. I wasn't able to, I had opportunities to go wrestle in college after high school, but I couldn't take it. My body was so messed up, I just couldn't do that. So that's what I wanted to try and find out with the strength and performance. Rather than just doing that, could we cut down on injuries? So the last year at Nebraska, I did a lot of research into things, and we did a pilot study for the Gymnastics Federation at that point, my last year there. They wanted to see, was weight training beneficial for kids? We knew it would be, but there were no studies on it. There was nothing set up. So in 88 to 89 over the last year, we took a group of kids and they did a blind testing. So all these kids were all tested on some high bar and different routines in gymnastics. Half of the kids then stayed with us and worked out in the weight room, for the next 6 weeks. And then the judges were brought back, retested everybody again. Well, what we saw was fantastic, and that the kids that were doing the weight training increased and the scores got better on everything that they did. And they were far above what the other kids did. And we knew it wasn't just that they got so strong in that time, but as we talked to the coaches that worked with these kids afterwards, they told us, they said, look, these kids have the self-confidence they were throwing things that I knew they could try before, but they were afraid to throw it. They didn't feel like they could do it. Well, now with the lifting and the strength work and all the progression, we kept loading those weights, and they just kept pushing and getting better and better. Now they could throw the skills. So that was what made me really look at, crap, it is okay. Let's, when I originally was thinking about it, let's start younger. And these kids, a lot of them were 10 to 13 years old. So we knew they couldn't put on the muscle mass, but the amount of strength that they can get. So we used a line of equipment called Future Force that AAI, the gymnastics club, put together with Boyd Eppley, his designs on this equipment. And it was great. So what we did is we set up and decided, okay, we're going to start a program for kids. We knew it would be beneficial because as soon as that study was over, we had to ship the equipment back to Iowa. It was just on loan for that time frame. And then the kids were bummed. That was a big part. So I thought, okay, maybe this is something the parents or coaches are making them do. But these kids really felt it, and they were missing it. So I thought, okay, now we got an idea. Now what do we do to, we know kids will do it if you get the right program. We know they can benefit. Now what do you do with it? So we found we said, okay, we're going to go do that. I didn't want to live in the cold weather anymore. So we looked around. I had a buddy that was here in Arizona, lived in Scottsdale at the time. Went around, we found a gymnastics club at that time, All-American Gymnastics with Mike Nador. And he agreed to have me come on out. So he bought the equipment. We got the Future Force line of equipment. We set it up in there. They had a great little spot. And some of these you'll see, if our green screen's working, you get to see some of these pictures of some of the stuff we brought back. But this equipment was great. It was scaled down for kids. They had a bench. They had an incline. They had a squat that had a strap around the waist that they squatted, so it wasn't on their
like
spine
a belt squat.
and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, we had all kinds of great stuff going in, curls and push downs and leg extension, all kinds of stuff. Well, the idea was great and it was set up in the Future Force because at that time they didn't know what kids could do because they weren't doing anything long term. Ours was really the first program to really do something long term with these kids year round. So we started that in '89. What we found out after that first year of training, and really a lot of them didn't even take the first year, but the equipment was plastic weights that you could fill with lead shot is what we put in it, so you could add. So they were anywhere from 5 to 15 pounds generally on most of them that you could slide onto this carriage and make maybe 100 pounds of weight on these things, on the bench and the squat and whatever we're doing. Well, after a while, our kids were maxing out the equipment. They didn't do any more of it. So then we were taking Olympic plates and we were sliding inside the carriage as well, and they were doing things 200. Yeah. So it was a big stress on the equipment and stuff we had to do. So a few years later, what we ended up doing is designing our own line of equipment, and we scaled it down for the kids. But now we could do selectorized plates. So those machines were generally 100 to 200 pounds, depending on what it was. So they could just pop it in, go, and we'd still adjust it. So I had designed and got that set up. And we built a couple lines of equipment and used that at facilities. And that was great. And that's where we really got the, a little bit more of it. Well, while I was at Nebraska before I came out, I was back and forth trying to figure, okay, what's the name? What are we going to come up with? And I figured really finally came to the strength of America, because I felt really it was the strength of our country really lies on our kids, whatever it is going forward. That if we can take care of our kids and teach them the right way, we have a better foundation all the way across. So that's where we thought, okay, strength of America, that's a no-brainer, that's what we're going to do. So our original logo, which I can find it, we'll put it up here for you, was just the outline of the United States. Yeah. Strength of America, just a basic one.
On the old polos, yeah.
Yeah, and it advanced to our muscle guy after that years later. But so it's just been, hit the ground running ever since after that point. But it was a pretty cool thing to come in and get that started, and for Mike to take a chance on us to come in and start that kind of a program. And the kids really, they loved it, they thrived on it, and have done a lot of great things since then.
Awesome. So we knocked out a few there. So how did that, where you started the gymnastics, how did that expand or get to the point of where it is today?
Well, we originally only had room for the strength program. That's what we did. We had a weight room. And that's really what I thought originally Strength of America was going to be, was primarily just a gym for kids where we did weight training. I knew if we could work on strength and mobility, we could cut down a lot of these injuries. So we took a lot with the gymnasts, and swimmers were kind of our first athletes that we really had into the program.
Interesting.
And with a lot of the shoulder problems that we saw and back problems, we saw that typically it wasn't a flexibility problem, because these kids, the flexibility they had was incredible. Yeah. And the strength they had was pretty good. But the balance of strength, because they did those sports year. Our swimmers, they swam year-round. The gymnasts, they did gymnastics year-round. There wasn't baseball or anything, which was kind of funny once we progressed it into our power training and our speed work and a lot of things. We started doing a lot of hand-eye coordination and med balls, and the number of kids that our gymnasts just couldn't catch a ball just amazed me.
Just
because
simple things.
They never did.
Kids should be able to.
Yeah, they never did that stuff. So when we started looking at, okay, an athlete needs to be well-rounded. They need to do all of these things. And that's where we started then structuring, okay, here's your weight room time, and then we go down to the gym. And then we took floor space in, and then we started doing our speed work and our plyometric work and our deceleration, how to land and move. Because, again, most of them didn't concentrate on any of that. And that's when we saw an injury happen. They were so powerful and so strong, but they couldn't hit the brakes. And when they went into it, that kind of force was just shredding body parts. So that's where we started tweaking and adjusting. Because, again, even that time, 30 years ago, there weren't a lot of studies. There weren't a lot of things out there on kids. Yeah. We knew that the NSCA had endorsed it, the Pediatrics Association had endorsed it, the Olympic Committee endorsed strength training. But there wasn't much out there beyond, yes, it's good for them to do. Here's basic sets and reps they need to do. And that was about it.
Yeah.
So we took the basic guidelines, the stuff I learned from Boyd, and then we created the program, and then trial and error through the years too of, well, we need to add this, or this needs to go, or this is too much time, so let's do that. So most of our programs then went to an hour and a half of training, where they do 45 minutes of weight training and 45 minutes of speed and agility training. And then we'd adjust the program based on that. And in the summertime, we ran into our 4-day-a-week programs, which is what we've been doing for probably the last 15 years.
Yeah, awesome. How many kids and coaches have you worked with in the past 30 years? Do you have that number?
Yeah, we're a little over 15,000 right now, after 30 years. That's a lot of people we've had out there. I wish we'd had the technology with the internet. It would have been fantastic to have all that group within the database and going. And then, of course,
pictures
learning
and stuff too. Yeah,
learning techie. I've lost a lot of people through there just because of you get on this one and you go to here and then the list is gone and you set. But it would have been fantastic to have them all piled up. But we know we've just kept track of camps and coaches clinics and all these things through the year and how many we've done each year, and it's been pretty exciting to see how many people we've touched and to see things that I do periodically too on Facebook or people. And we had one of the kids that let me know after after the state fair last year. He saw something on there and he thanked me for that because he gets into the state fair free every year because he does a pull-up contest and he did more pull-ups than anybody else, so they gave him a pass, so he gets in for free every year. And the Strength of America program, he was just a little skinny kid coming into it, and so it was cool, that they're still thinking positive things, and now we've got kids that are second generation kids that are coming to us, which is pretty cool that they liked it enough that they're bringing their own kids.
Yeah,
making me a little old, but that's all right. I like it.
All right, the $1 million question to wrap it up. After 30 years, where do you plan on taking Strength of America next?
Well, we're going to Disneyland. Oh, no, we're not going to. I want to go to Disneyland. After 30.
Bring me some churros.
Disneyland. Yes, churros. I'm good. All right, my thing right now is after this 30 years, the body is telling me too, it's time to shift gears a little. I'm still going to be doing camps and helping with things as much as I can. But what I really want to do is, we've helped so many already, but I also realize we've got a couple generations of kids that have never heard of us. Or still the number of injuries are ridiculous. We do ACL talks all the time, about 250,000 every year in ATL. And it's ridiculous. And there's no reason we should have that many when 70% are non-impact.
Yeah.
So these are some real structural problems, mechanics that we need to fix. So now what my main plan is, we're you and I doing our things, but definitely stepping it up our online presence. We want to do a lot more coaches clinics. So we go to schools, go to leagues, go to clubs, physically videotape, put those things together so that other coaches programs around the country can implement the same type of things we did to keep the kids safe. Also, we've got a lot of things planned by the first of the year where our specific athletes and those parents and that youth coach or whatever wants to get in the system will have online training programs as well so that they can learn everything from how to prepare for a football combine, what to do about testing, how to get better on things, how to cut down on knee injuries, 30-day programs so they can understand what it is, and then we'll have weekly programs that we'll mail out that they'll email now. I'm still on the old system, the mail. So an email, and then they'll have the video clips, everything else, so they'll know exactly what, there's no question on how we jump, how we land, what the mechanics, sets and reps, everything that they need to do to keep them safe. And that's what makes me happy more than anything is we just keep these kids safe so they don't have the knees that I do at my age. that by the time they hit 50, they can wake up, stand up, and go, man, my knees are pretty good, much better than Bob's were at that time. Then I've done my job. So I think the online presence more than anything else, and I always love doing the hands-on stuff with coaches. So we'll definitely do a lot more of that as well. But that's where I'm going to be shifting gears myself, is more clinic-based and online programs.
Awesome. Good stuff. A lot of things I didn't figure out. Yeah. Well, it's always fun.
Yeah, but I think, I just appreciate you wanting to do this and pull it out. And I think for you guys, we've had different questions and things through the years. And it's been just so much fun for me. Hard to believe that 30 years has gone by with all of this going into it, that structuring and developing weight training programs and designing equipment and putting online programs and nutrition stuff and so many things that we've done that we still want to do that, I've got no slowdown. I've got a lot more stuff I want to keep doing into it. But that's why I just need you guys as much as we can to keep me posted on things that you need, what you do, and put me in contact with your leagues and stuff, because if we can keep these kids safe, that's my primary thing. We always, of course, everybody wants speed and power, and we want to do that too. We're definitely, you come to our camps, and those that have been to them or coaches that have seen it, they know it's not just a soft program just for injury, keep you injury free, but by us being a powerful, stronger athlete that learns the stuff they do counts and it matters, and there's no excuses, or you can't blame it on anybody else. The buck stops with them. They've got to eat, they've got to hydrate, they've got to get to sleep. They focus and pay attention. They'll be a dominant athlete on the field. But if they keep the mechanics and do what we're doing as well, then they're safer too. And then in the long run, very few of them are going to be playing professional athletes or be Olympic athletes. And we've had a few of those, but we want them healthy and they feel good. Then I'm happy I've done my job. So it's been fun, but it's been fun also watching little Bobby going from his little guy at 5, starting with our weight training and going through the program, to a top wrestler in high school, a collegiate wrestler, get through all of his career without having to have any of the surgeries and ripping up joints and tearing up his body part. Then he's been my guinea pig for a lot of years and showing the Strength of America program works. And it was good. He was a good listener and followed through most of the time.
Half the time.
Yeah, he got it most of the time. But, it's been fun. But we got a lot more stuff that we're going to be doing. So appreciate it. Thanks for all your help. And we got a lot more stuff ahead of you.
Keep plugging away.
Yeah, we'll have fun. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Any comments, questions? My old athletes I've had still aren't old compared to Bob, but my prior athletes, love to hear back from you guys. You guys comment below or send things out or keep sending me posts and things. We'll put it out there, and pictures and stuff too, because we want to keep that going the rest of this year.
Yeah, I'd love to see those. It'd be fun.
Throwback Thursday and old stuff that you guys had or old memories and stuff. I love to share it. And Sandy and I laugh every time we see those things from you guys. It makes us smile. So appreciate all of you.
All right. You guys have a good day. Thanks for tagging along and checking out this video.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And we'll see you next time.
See you later.